Thank you very much indeed. Good evening. It's now 5:30. Members not of the Council and members of the press and public, I welcome you to this meeting of the Council of the 25th of March 2021. Prior to this meeting, all participants have previously checked that they can be heard and seen and can see and hear other members. It is vital that you can be heard and it is preferred that cameras are kept on throughout the meeting. To double check this and introduce everyone who is present at this remote meeting, I would kindly ask that I confirm your attendance and your role of job title when I say your name. So going through a register of attendance, members, Councillor Alban.
Yes, here, Chair. Member for Eastcliff, Ramsgate and Cabinet Member for Operational Services.
Thank you. Councillor Ara.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor for Central Harbour in Ramsgate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashby.
Present, Chair, Westbrook Ward and Shadow Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Evening, Chair, Viking Ward Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Bambridge. Councillor Bambridge. I'll come back. Councillor
Sorry, Chair, I was on mute. Present. Councillor for Westgate Ward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jill Bayford.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor for Bradstow Ward and Shadow Cabinet Member for Housing and Community Safety.
Thank you. Councillor Robert Bayford.
Evening, Chairman. Member for Kingsgate and Chair of Overview and Scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyd.
Present, Chair, Member for Garland Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Braidwood. Councillor Braidwood. I'll come back. Councillor Coleman Cook.
Present, Chair. Councillor for Birchington North and Vice Chair of Planning.
Thank you. Councillor Crittenden.
Present, Chair, Councillor for Eastcliff Ward, Ramsgate.
Thank you. Councillor Curry.
Present, Chair, Councillor for Cliftonville West and Vice Chair of Overview and Scrutiny.
Thank you. Councillor Day. Councillor Day. I shall come back. Councillor Dennis.
Evening, Chair. Councillor for Garland Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Dexter.
Present, Chairman. Councillor for St Peter's Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Duckworth.
Present, Chair, Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Estates and Councillor for Dane Valley Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Everett.
Present, Chair, Councillor for Newington Ward and Leader of the Council.
Thank you. Councillor Farrance.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor for Salmston Ward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fellows.
Yeah, evening, Mr Chairman. Councillor for Birchington South.
Thank you. Councillor Game.
Present, Chair. Councillor for Cliftonville East.
Thank you. Councillor Garner.
Yeah, I'm here, Chair. Councillor for St Peter's Ward. I'm Leader of the Green Group and Chair of Governance and Audit Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Present, Chair, and Member for Nethercourt and Southwood.
Thank you. Councillor Gregory.
Here, Chair. Councillor for Salmston Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Hart. I've seen
here,
you.
Chair. Yeah, here, Chair. Councillor for Thanet Villages.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkinson.
I'm here, Chair. I'm Councillor for Sir Moses Montefiore Ward, Ramsgate.
Thank you. Councillor Huxley.
Present, Chair. Councillor for Eastcliff Ward in Ramsgate.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor for Cliftonville West.
Thank you. Councillor Cupp.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor for Birchton South and Shadow Cabinet Member for Operational Services.
Thank you. Now, I've had apologies from Councillor Pat Moore. Councillor Paul Moore.
Good evening, Mr Chairman. Councillor for Beacon Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Ovenden.
Here, Chair, Member for Nethercourt.
Thank you. I've also had apologies from Councillor Parsons. Councillor Linda Piper.
Here, Chair, Councillor for Northwood. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stuart Piper.
Here, Chair, Councillor for Northwood Ward and Leader of the Thanet Independents.
Thank you. Councillor Potts.
Chairman, Councillor Potts will be joining us later. She's slightly delayed, but will be attending the meeting.
Right, I'll put that down as in when she arrives. Councillor Pugh.
Present Chair, Councillor for Thanet Villages Ward and Shadow Deputy Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Rattigan.
Here, Chair, Councillor Cliffsend and Begwell.
Thank you. Councillor Rolfe.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor for Beacon Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers.
Here, Chair, Councillor for Cliffsend and Pegwell.
Thank you. Councillor Roper.
Here, Chair, Councillor for Thanet Villages.
Councillor Rozecki.
Present Chair, Councillor for Northwood and also Deputy Leader of the Thanet Independents.
Thank you. Councillor David Saunders.
Here, Chair, Shadow Cabinet Member for Finance, Administration and Community Wealth Building and Viking Ward Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Maeve Saunders.
Present Chairman, Councillor for Viking Ward also and Chairman Joint 20 occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scobie.
Evening, Chair. Councillor for Cliftonville West.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor for Westgate-on-Sea.
Thank you. Councillor Shrub.
Here, Chair, and Councillor for Cliftonville East.
Thank you. Councillor Tomlinson.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor for Westbrook Ward and Chairman of the Planning Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Towning.
Good evening, Chairman. Councillor for Cliftonville East. East, sorry.
Now, you better be sure. What was that again? Councillor Whitehead.
Present Chair, Member for Margate Central, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Housing and Safer Communities.
Quite so, thank you. Councillor Wing.
Oh, I'm trying to sorry, Chair, couldn't unmute. Present and Councillor for Central Harbour in Ramsgate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Ward Councillor for Birchington South and Vice Chairman of the Council.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Yates.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor for Margate Central and Cabinet Member for Finance, Administration and Community Wealth Building.
Thank you very much. Just going back briefly to Councillor Braidwood. Are you with us now, Councillor Braidwood? Councillor Braidwood? Councillor Day, are you with us? Councillor Day? Councillor Day? I shall have to mark those two councillors as absent since I have not had apologies. Now, register of tender officers, we have the Chief Executive, Ms. Homer. We have the Deputy Chief Executive, Mr. Willis. We have the Director of Operational Services, Mr. Waite. We have the Director of Law and Democracy, Ms. Culligan. We have the Committee Services Manager, Mr. Hughes. So, moving on, if you have any technical difficulties this evening during the meeting, then please contact one of the Democratic Services officers on call who will attempt to assist you. I would ask participants, when you are not speaking, please mute your microphone. This minimises background noise and will help everyone in listening to the proceedings. Microphones must only be on if the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain my permission to speak, please very briefly indicate on the chat to the right side of the screen, and I will then make a note of and go back to you once the person speaking has finished. Webcasting of proceedings. Please note this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public, except for any item of business where exempt or confidential information is considered following exclusion of the press and public from the meeting. This meeting is also being recorded and will be subsequently broadcast on the internet. We have some restrictions on the use of mobile phones. Would everyone present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst the meeting is in progress. Do not turn your phone off, as it will make it harder for Democratic services to contact you should they need to. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting other business, and ensure that you are in a quiet room free from distractions for the duration of the meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I've already mentioned 2 apologies. Are there any other apologies for absence? It seems not. I'm not having any indications. Agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of February 2021. I move the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 25th of February 2021 be approved and signed as a correct record. Would the Vice Chairman please second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Unless anyone objects to the minutes, I will take them as agreed. And I have nothing. I take them as agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 3, announcements. Now, I understand that Councillor Patmore has recently been unwell. I'm sure the Chamber will join me in offering our best wishes. I'm not actually aware of any particular details, just simply to say that she is unwell at the moment. We wish her the very best, I'm sure. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest this evening? I'm not getting any indications from anyone. Agenda item 5, petitions. No petitions have been received in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 12. Now, moving on to agenda item 6, questions from the press and public. To make members of the public aware, Democratic Services can assist you in crafting your question if you are unsure of the appropriate wording. If you would like any assistance, please look at the Council Speaking at Council Meetings webpage or contact the Democratic Services team, who will be only too happy to help you. Now, 6 questions have been received from members of the public in accordance with Council Procedure Rule number 13. Please note that only the questioner and respondent are permitted to speak on the question, and that if the questioner is not present at this meeting, their question cannot be put but will be replied to in writing. The usual procedure, therefore. Agenda item 6A, question number 1 from a member of the public regarding the housing policy. I call in this instance upon Mr. Hughes, Committee Services Manager, to read the question submitted by Mr. Dickman. Mr. Hughes, are you there?
Thank you, Chairman. The question is, as Thanet is recognised as an area of high deprivation, which is likely to be exacerbated by the aftermath of COVID-19, should TDC be reassessing the housing policy? Rather than building large developments on arable land, would it be more appropriate to concentrate on smaller projects, providing affordable / appropriate housing? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes, and thank you for your question, Mr. Dickman. I call upon the leader to respond. Councillor Everett.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I'd also like to thank Mr. Dickman for his question. The council is required through its local plan to meet the housing requirements for the area. The housing need assessment has to be undertaken in accordance with government guidance. This assessment also identifies specific local needs for affordability in different age groups and the mix of housing sizes, types and tenures that are required. The local plan process looks at the options for providing sufficient housing land, including brownfield sites, and this is then considered at a public examination. The adopted local plan contains policies and allocations for a variety of housing sizes and types on a mix of different sites, large and small, urban and rural, and brownfield, greenfield. In total, 30% of the identified housing land supply in the local plan is on sites of 50 units or less, and 25% of the supply is on sites of 20 units or less. Meeting the housing needs of the area is an important part of responding to the deprivation issues in the district, along with many other projects and programmes with which the council is involved. It's often the case that larger sites are capable of delivering key infrastructure that cannot be accommodated on smaller sites, and examples are around transport, health and education, and indeed affordable housing. The update to the local plan will also consider future options in the district for any additional development requirements up to 2040, and we intend to hold an initial public consultation on these proposals for the update in the autumn. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Everett. That's very thorough, I'm sure. Agenda item 6B, question number 2 from a member of the public regarding dog fouling. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Knibb to the meeting. Could the questioner please turn on their microphone and state the name of the Cabinet member to whom their question is to be put, and read out the exact wording of the question that they have submitted to Council. Mr. Knibb. Are you with us, Mr. Knibb? I'm being, our Democratic Services Manager is nodding.
Mr. Knibb is with us.
He's not with us.
He is, Chairman. He is.
Ah, okay, good.
Unmute his microphone for us, please.
There. Hello?
Hello, Mr. Knibb.
Hello. It's a question for Councillor Steve Alban. It's concerning. I just wanted to know what the council were doing to combat this scourge of dog manure on Thanet streets at the moment.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Knibb. That was your question as preferred to council. I call upon Councillor Alban to respond. Councillor Alban.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you for your question, Mr. Knibb. Firstly, it is illegal to leave dog faeces lying around in public. If it is not picked up, you could be fined a fixed penalty notice of £100. If our dog wardens and enforcement officers can catch them. Being unaware your dog has fouled or not having a suitable means of clearing the dog mess is not a reasonable excuse, and they will still face a fine. We have over 30 Ticks Pack free dog waste bag dispensers across the district in strategic locations of parks, open spaces and promenades. Also, the Fido Dogs quad vehicle operates 5 days a week picking up dog mess. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Alban. Of course, it is a very real problem, one that I confronted myself when I was in Cabinet some time ago. Agenda item 6D, a question. No, I'm sorry, agenda item 6C, question number 3 from a member of the public regarding litter in Ramsgate. I once again call upon Mr. Hughes, Committee Service Manager, to read the question submitted by a Miss Kirby. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. The question is as follows. Ramsgate is a lovely town, but the rubbish is a nightmare. There are lots of groups out picking up litter voluntarily in the community, but unfortunately it's not enough. Are there any plans to employ more staff to help keep our streets clean and tidy?
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. And thank you for your question, Ms. Kirby. I call upon Councillor Alban to respond.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Ms. Kirby. I'm pleased to say that Thanet District Council has been working with the Town Council and Ramsgate Litter Forum on street cleansing in the last 3 years. We are this year reviewing bin locations and the efficiency of emptying these, but there is no additional budget or resources available to increase the size of our street cleansing team. Following the high numbers of visitors to our beaches last year, we will be commencing our usual seasonal beach and promenade clearing much earlier this year on the 29th of March. We have increased the size of some of our bins around the beaches this year from 360 litres to 1,100 litres. Coastal bins are emptied at least twice daily. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Alban. Just so as everyone knows, Councillor Linda Potts has now joined the meeting. Agenda item 6D, question number 4 from a member of the public regarding recycling. I'm pleased to welcome Miss Austin to the meeting. Could the questioner please turn on their microphone and state the name of the Cabinet member to whom their question is to be put, and read out the exact wording of the question that they are submitting to this council. Miss Austin, are you there? Are you with us?
I am, thank you, Chair. My question is to the ever popular Councillor Alban. My question is, the 18th of March was Global Recycling Day. Thanet's recycling rates are poor. Many residents have no doorstep collection and public facilities are extremely limited. In light of TDC's climate emergency declaration, how do you plan to improve our recycling rates and facilities, and what targets are you setting to achieve this? Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Austin. Councillor Alban, it's a tough portfolio, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's worthwhile, Chair. Thank you, and I thank Ms. Austin for her important question. Can respond as follows, Chair. The council offers fortnightly curbside recycling collection to 78% of Thanet households. Properties must have space on their property to store blue lidded bins or containers to allow collection. The needs for effective recycling features heavily in the council's climate emergency change action plan, and the service is committed to offering readily available and accessible recycling to residents. There are a number of public available recycling areas to go along with the household waste and recycling at Manston Road, Margate. This year, we are trialling one high-rise block of flats for recycling and are also working with Thanet District Council's housing to trial this at council-owned high-rise flats. We are putting out large 1,100 litre recycling bins at our Blue Flag beaches and Seaside Award beaches. These have aperture type tops which will accept bottle and cans, etc. We will promote with clear messaging on what can and can't be recycled. Recycling is everybody's responsibility. One of the major issues with the public recycling sites, for example, in car parks around the district, is contamination with non-recycling waste, which often means that the whole content of the container has to be treated as non-recyclable waste. We would like to further our engagement with resident groups this year where no curbside recycling is available to talk about options, including the potential for secure community recycling facilities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Alban. Just so to all councillors know, Councillor Simon Day has now joined the meeting. Agenda item 6E, question number 5 from a member of the public regarding the local plan. Once again, I call upon Mr. Hughes, Committee Services Manager, to read the question submitted by Mrs. Wells. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. The question is as follows. In light of TDC's declaration of a climate emergency, will the council now review brownfield sites such as the 13 hectares in All Saints Avenue that have been identified for industrial building in the local plan, rather than residential or mixed use, and so prevent the loss of Thanet's prime agricultural land? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes, and thank you for your question, Mrs. Wells. I call upon the leader, Councillor Everett, to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mrs. Wells for her question. In the local plan, we have to find sites not just for housing, but for other uses as well, including employment uses. In all cases, this will be a mix of brownfield and greenfield land, depending on what sites are available and suitable. There is therefore a careful balance required to meet both housing and other development needs in the district. If businesses are displaced as a result of land being reallocated for housing, they usually need to find other sites, which might also be on greenfield land. They could also decide to locate outside the district instead, resulting in a loss of local jobs or longer journeys for Thanet residents that they employ. In the last local plan process, the council undertook an assessment of existing employment sites, including the All Saints Avenue site, and was able to propose the removal of some 30 hectares of land from older or inappropriate industrial sites to be allocated for housing. The site at All Saints Avenue was not removed from business use. It is a brownfield site of about 3 hectares, and the site is currently partly occupied by existing businesses, but it is due to be reviewed as part of the local plan update work. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Everett. Moving on to our last question from members of the public this evening, agenda item 6F, question number 6, member of the public regarding public toilets in Broadstairs. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Bridges to the meeting. Could the questioner please turn on their microphone and state the name of the cabinet member to whom their question is to be put, and read out the exact wording of the question that they are submitting to the council. Mr. Bridges, are you with us?
Yes, thank you. It's for Councillor Alban again, on behalf of the Broadstairs Tourism Leisure Association. Can TDC make it a priority for all of the Broadstairs public toilets to be open from the 12th of April in what will be a very busy season? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. I told you this was a tough portfolio, Councillor Alban. Back to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Bridges, for your question. I can advise you that all toilets that are usually open all year round and those open in the summer season will be open from the 29th of March. Thank you, Chair.
Well, there's an answer. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Alban. That concludes questions from members of the public this evening. Therefore, moving on to agenda item 7, which are questions from members of the council. 4 questions have been received from members of the council this evening. Therefore, agenda item 7A, question number 1 from a member regarding the use of Ramsgate Harbour by jet skis. I call upon Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Chair. It's to Councillor Steve Alban. Sorry, Steve, you've got a busy night. So my question is, will jet ski users leaving and entering Ramsgate Harbour be required to follow all Ramsgate Port and Harbour maritime rules, regulations and bylaws as detailed in associated TDC documentation on the Port of Ramsgate Royal Harbour Marine website?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wing. Councillor Alban, you do seem ready to answer this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wing. Again, it wouldn't be right without having a question from you, your good self. The short answer is yes, but I shall elaborate. All vessels, including jet skis, using the harbour are subject to the published terms and conditions and also the bylaws of the harbour. In addition, it is a requirement for all vessels, including jet skis, to call port control via a mobile phone or VHF radio before arrival or departure. This is to ensure safety of the vessels moored or manoeuvring in and about the harbour of vessels moored. Let me state that again. Before arriving or departure, this is to ensure safety of vessels moored or manoeuvring in and around the harbour. Jet ski users will be required to hold relevant insurance and adhere to the 5-knot speed limit in the harbour. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Councillor Wing, do you have a supplementary question for Councillor Alban?
No, thank you. That was the concern of many boat owners about the small size of boats and big boats coming in and the potential for collisions. So thank you.
Well, there's no need to ask you for a response there, Councillor Alban, unless you want to. You're waiving that right. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wing. Agenda item 7B, question number 2 from a member regarding the Margate Town Deal funding. I call upon Councillor Pugh. Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, with the announcement by central government that the Margate Town Deal has been awarded £22.2 million of funding to support Margate's long-term economic growth and well-being, how will this council ensure that this transformational funding truly benefits residents of Margate and the surrounding area?
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. I call upon Councillor Everett, the leader, to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Pugh, for your question. As you say, up to £22.2 2 million has been allocated to the Margate Town Deal Board, of which the council is a member, along with other key stakeholders from both the public and private sector, and importantly, representatives from the community. It is the board who will ensure the funding is truly transformational for the residents of Margate by prioritising and driving forward those projects contained in the submission to government. The projects have been carefully chosen because they will act as anchor catalyst projects, which in themselves will generate economic change, and some because they will be key to supporting community regeneration in Margate, which is crucial to ensuring sustainable change. All of the projects included in the plan evolved from an open call to the community for proposals that met the government's criteria and would deliver the maximum positive impact for the town's economic future. The proposals were considered in themes for delivery and then reviewed by the People's Panel. As the Margate Town Deal Bill did not receive the full 29 million, some of the projects will now go through a process of adjustment to fit with the funding allocated. However, this work will be overseen by the board, and there'll be further opportunities for the People's Panel to make an input. This process doesn't mean that anything will be permanently lost, as Margate now has a long-term investment plan which goes beyond the Margate Town Deal Fund.
You finish, Councillor Everett.
Yeah, sorry.
Wrap that up neatly. Thank you very much. Councillor Pugh, do you have a supplementary question for the Leader?
I do, Chair, and thank you, Leader, for your response. I'll be honest, although I understood your emphasis on the Town Deal Board allocating the funding, the fact that the Chair has just recently resigned from the Town Deal Board doesn't really fill me with much hope, to be honest. But I suppose my supplementary question is, can you confirm that we as a council, we still have an obligation to ensure that this money is spent properly? Many of our councillors sit on the board in varying capacities as representatives. So can you confirm that local groups that get the funding will be genuine local groups and that funding won't be allocated purely to further political agendas?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Pugh. I call upon Councillor Everett, the Leader, to respond.
Well, as far as I'm aware, Councillor Pugh, there are more Conservatives on the Town Deal Board than there are Labour members. So I hope the Conservatives aren't planning any political agendas around the funding, but I don't think that's the case. In terms of the chair of the board resigning, he's done that for good reasons, which hopefully will benefit Margate. A new chair is being chosen by the board. But yes, the council is the accountable body, and we will be taking our responsibilities seriously. We will exercise them as you would expect. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Everett. Agenda item 7C, question number 3 from a member regarding Birchington High Street. I call upon Councillor Fellows. Councillor Fellows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is to the Leader, although I'm aware that half of it's already been answered, but I will ask again anyway. Will the Leader commit tonight to reopening the toilets in Birchington Village and also commit to helping our unique high street in Birchington by offering the same parking scheme that we had up until Christmas, which our small businesses state was a real boost after the last lockdown?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Fellows. Back to you, Councillor Alban, to respond.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Fellows, for your question. Firstly, in relation to the parking scheme that was done at Christmas, there is no commitment to offer the same scheme that Birchington had at Christmas at present. And secondly, the Alpha Road toilets and mini-spay toilets will be open from the 29th of March. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Councillor Fellows, do you have a supplementary?
I do, but it was to the Leader, but anyone's free to answer it if they want. In the run-up to the end of the first lockdown last summer, there were meetings and consultations with ward councillors and parish councils to put together a plan to reopen our high streets. We're just over 2 weeks away from the end of the longest lockdown of this pandemic, and we've not heard anything from this administration on any plans to support small businesses post-lockdown. Recently, Thanet has been awarded £191,000 to help our high streets reopen by our government. Can the Leader tell me how much Birchington will receive of this money? And if he can't answer this specifically, please could he share any methodology he will use to decide how much each town will get?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Fellows. Now, of course, the portfolio holder is Councillor Alban, who is normally there. But you've been called upon twice, Councillor Everett. Do you wish to, or shall I go back to Councillor Alban?
I'm perfectly happy to respond to that.
You are, Councillor Everett.
The reality is that the government rolled out a number of funding streams during the last year, and obviously the council put in place various measures to deal with those, to deal with the situation. That situation was new, and clearly there was a lot that we all needed to learn, the community and the council, about how to spend the money. In terms of the current changes, this 191,000, which personally I find a bit disappointing, considering it's supposed to include an extra amount to deal with our beach management issues, which are specific to coastal authorities. This 191,000 was only allocated to us in the last few days. And clearly we are having meetings to talk about how we will use it, but we already have things like COVID wardens. We already have lots of measures in place around social distancing and signage. So I don't think you're going to see a raft of new and different proposals coming forward, but I'm sure that this is something that we can discuss with members across the council in one of our briefings. And if there are any particular concerns, I'm quite happy to meet members and talk to them. But this is not a new situation this time. This is really a return to what we've had before. And I'd also say that there's a huge amount of work being done by the finance team in terms of the government's ever-changing rollout of business grants, which of course we're delighted to do, but it is placing a huge imposition on our finance staff, and I hope that all members recognise that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Everett. Do you have a supplement? Oh, we've had that. Sorry. We've already had it. You don't want another one, do you, Councillor Alban? Agenda item 7D, question number 4 from a member regarding enforcement within the district. I call upon Councillor Towning. Councillor Towning.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is for, I think it is for the leader of the council, Councillor Rick Everett, or it could be for, it's for Steve Alban. I beg your, Councillor Alban, beg your pardon. How will enforcement be carried out to restrict barbecues, prohibition of consumption of alcohol in public places, dealing with antisocial behaviour, litter, illegal parking across driveways, overnight parking, and all-night beach parties? How does the council propose to patrol our open spaces? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Towning. I call upon once again for Councillor Alban to respond.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Towning, for your important question. Through our new public space protection order for beaches and coast, our new coastal code of conduct, our enforcement officers dedicated to the beaches will be patrolling proactively and responding to reports alongside other members of the enforcement team and the town wardens. Obstructions of driveways is dealt with by Kent Police. However, we will be patrolling areas where we know this is a seasonal problem and deter offenders. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Councillor Towning, do you have a supplementary question?
I certainly do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response, Councillor Alban. I'd like to clear up some messages that have been going out. On the 18th of this month, we had the cabinet meeting, and at that meeting, Councillor Wing raised an issue about music. She suggested that she would go down to the beach with her guitar and most probably with her swimming friends. Now, in the PSPO, it is quite clearly stated that there should be no music in public places. In addition to that point, also, our leader, Councillor Ashby, raised the issue about overnight parking. Now, I understand from an email that the Director of Corporate Affairs, Gavin Waite, has indicated to her that people who park on a highway perfectly legally overnight can be moved on. And that issue was raised with your good self, Councillor Alban. And you quite clearly stated that you would have to apply for an RTO to Kent County Council. Now, here we have two instances where the PSPO is stating you can't do things. And on the other hand, you're saying to a councillor, you can have music. and we are being told, oh well, you can also have move people on overnight.
Yes, Councillor Townley, can you wind up your question?
The other points are with regards to the enforcement officers. How many enforcement officers do we have currently trained and ready to go out on shift? And how many shifts per day will we have, daytime and after hours? Because no one knows.
This is too much for the Cabinet member to answer in one go. Could you be a bit more concise about your question, please?
Well,
so you have something to address.
Because we have, Chair, who are trained and ready to go enforcement officers, and what the shift pattern will be on a daily basis, 7 days a week, during the daytime and also after hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Alban, are you able to answer that question?
Well, Chair, I will try and remember everything that Councillor Townley said, important as they are. Firstly, in relation to music or anything else on our beaches, it's down to a matter of common sense and education. And our officers, if there is loud music which is upsetting, interfering with residents and visitors on the beach, they will be talked to and asked to turn it down. Someone like, as I previously said, as Councillor Winston wants to just go down and strum a guitar on a beach, it's probably not going to offend anybody. So we wouldn't be serving any kind of enforcement or taking any kind of enforcement action. Again, that is a matter of common sense. As far as the staff are concerned, yes, we have one full-time enforcement officer who will be there at weekends and at times there. So there will be an officer there full-time during seven days a week. There will also be other enforcement officers that are currently being trained in relation to being able to serve fixed penalty notices and to talk to and educate people on the beaches and on our foreshores. In relation to the parking, let's make this clear. As far as people camping on our open spaces, and that includes our promenades, whether that be in a vehicle or that be tents, that is part of the PSPO, and they will be dealt with and can be dealt with as part of that. If they are parked overnight on the public highway, the public highway belongs to Kent County Council, not to Thanet District Council, and therefore a road traffic order is required. We are currently looking at doing that on various places. I've talked to Councillor Ashby, your leader, in relation to that, and we are looking at various places, Palm Bay, Westgate, and along the coast, in which we can serve these TROs. The only thing I can't help you out with, Councillor Townley, is should anybody park across somebody's driveway on the public highway, which includes the pavement, is unless there are double yellow lines, that is a matter for the police. Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Alban. I think you may have surprised yourself with your memory there, answering a multiple question. And thank you again, Councillor Townley. Agenda item 8, motions on notice. Now, no motions on notice have been received in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 3. And therefore, I shall move straight on to agenda item 9, the Leader's Report. Now, as this meeting is entirely virtual, the Leader's Report has been circulated to all members, and this evening the Leader is going to read his report to us. So, Councillor Everett, are you ready with your report?
I am, thank you, Chair. And I thought that the public who are viewing this meeting might find it more useful to hear what I've got to say if they're going to listen to responses to it. Although it's only 4 weeks since my last report to the Council, there have been what we hope will be 2 very significant developments for Thanet arising from the Chancellor's budget on the March the 3rd. Firstly, we had the news, as we've already mentioned tonight, that Margate had been awarded up to 22.2 million in response to its town deal bid from the government's 3.6 billion Towns Fund. The success of this bid is a testament to the hard work of everyone involved, including the board and its chair, Graham Rasey, the local community who submitted projects for the town investment plan and gave their views, and the council itself. Now that heads of terms have been agreed, the next 12 months will see a great deal more work as detailed business cases must be developed for the projects that are to be taken forward, after which the funding will be spent over a 5-year period. The board will lead on this, but the council is the accountable body for the funds and has an important role to play alongside other community representatives. This is an exciting moment for Margate, and clearly the intention is that the projects around creative production and skills, coastal wellbeing, improved public realm and connectivity, and supporting and diversifying heritage assets will themselves generate further investment in the town, leading to a multiplier effect. Graham Rasey had already let us know that he would be standing down as the chair in order to lead the delivery of a new digital education provision in the town. So a long-term successor will be appointed by the board in due course. But his contribution has been significant, and we thank him for that. Very soon after the Margate announcement, it emerged that Thanet had been given Tier 1 priority to bid for the government's new Levelling Up Fund, and we moved quickly to confirm that Thanet will be bidding for up to £20 million for Ramsgate. We expect to receive £125,000 of capacity funding to put together the bid, which itself needs to be submitted by mid-June in order to be eligible for the first tranche of awards, and we're already working on setting up the stakeholder engagement process. Although the terms of the scheme are different from the town deal, the experience of working up the Margate bid will stand us in good stead. And in fact, in anticipation of this new scheme, we'd already announced our Ramsgate Future project, and now we have the opportunity to take forward some ambitious plans for the town. This money has to be invested in local infrastructure with a visible impact on people and communities. Together with officers, I've met representatives of Ramsgate Town Council to discuss first steps, and as in Margate, engagement with the community will be crucial in designing a bid that commands widespread public support. Ramsgate is already set to benefit from £2.7 million from the Future High Streets Fund, and has also recently been awarded £602,000 for improvements to the town centre in Heritage Action Zone funding. In view of the importance of these two initiatives for Ramsgate and Margate, I'm making some changes to Cabinet portfolio responsibilities, and in future I will be taking the lead on regeneration issues, particularly in relation to Ramsgate, although the intention is that Councillor Ruth Duckworth will continue to be involved with the Margate Town deal. This will also enable Councillor Duckworth to give even more focus to the climate emergency issue, which is already part of her portfolio and around which some excellent work is happening, including the decision on grass cutting that came to Cabinet last week. While the funding for Margate and the prospect of further funding for Ramsgate is exciting, we should not lose sight of the fact that this apparent largesse follows more than a decade in which the level of government revenue support to Thanet has fallen sharply. When I was first elected here in 2011, our general fund revenue budget was £22 million, half of which was revenue support grant from the government intended to help level up areas with a lower council tax base. In the financial year about to start, the same budget to spend on our services for our residents will be £17 million. That is a 23% cut in cash terms and a 36% reduction after allowing for inflation. In the light of that, it is unsurprising that our ability to deliver the services our residents need has been severely constrained in recent years. The reduction also represents money that has been taken out of the local economy, reducing spending in Thanet with a knock-on effect on the area's prosperity. So to some extent, these government funding pots represent payback, and they are of course very welcome, but they are one-offs, and of itself, they won't help us clean the streets, manage litter and collect the bins better. We will need to continue to do more with less. I also want to say something to Broadstairs residents, since I know that some of them have asked in relation to these announcements, why not us? The simple answer is that the largest pockets of deprivation in our district are in Margate, Cliftonville and Ramsgate. The council recognises that Broadstairs would also benefit from investment, but we have to prioritise the areas where it can make the biggest difference. Although there's been some political controversy nationally over the priority given to affluent councils, the title of the Levelling Up Fund surely reflects its proper application, and this applies within council areas as well as across parts of the country. We did consult South Thanet MP Craig McKinley prior to announcing our intentions, as the government guidance encourages, and I am grateful for his support of the principle of a bid for Ramsgate. I know many people were concerned about the incident which resulted in chunks of polystyrene being washed ashore at Ramsgate on Saturday, March the 13th, and I am grateful to all those volunteers, including Councillor Tony Ovenden, who've played their part alongside the council in helping to remove it from the foreshore. The polystyrene came from top pontoons which had been moored outside our district and had broken loose in the River Stour sometime earlier. Apart from being untidy and potentially hazardous as it breaks down over time, the polystyrene represents a risk to wildlife, especially given the proximity of the SSSI. Unfortunately, the smaller pieces can only be picked up by hand, and there is a risk that more will wash up on the tide as time goes on. Broadstairs was very much part of the focus last Thursday when we held our first online question and answer session with residents, themed around beach management. This is obviously a hot topic given the imminent relaxation of the COVID stay-at-home restrictions and the potential for an influx of visitors from next week. We advertised the meeting via the Wave, and I was delighted that we had around 100 applications to take part or view the session on YouTube and received dozens of questions. The feedback received suggests the meeting was well received, and as well as explaining the measures the council has taken and is taking to prepare for an early surge of visitors, we were able to hear directly from residents about their own concerns. It clearly helped that we had a good story to tell around the new PSPOs, the early reopening of toilets, including extra temporary ones at Margate and Joss Bay, the provision of more bins around the district, an additional lifeguard at Joss Bay, plans to manage visitor parking more proactively and improve communications. But we know there will still be challenges. We've asked both our local MPs to press the case to government for additional funding for Thanet in recognition of the particular issues we face, and I'm grateful for their support on this. Of course, the public will always want to talk to us about things they think we could do better, and there are bound to be questions we can't answer immediately and solutions that we can't offer. But I believe we can build more confidence and respect by entering into closer dialogue with residents in this way. The council will continue to engage with residents by a variety of methods, and this is an addition, not a substitute, but the experience of lockdown has opened up this new channel. In my view, it must be part of the way we communicate with the public at large in future, just as it has been an important mechanism for engaging members over the last year. All that said, I very much hope that by the next ordinary council meeting in July, we will be able to meet face-to-face in the council chamber, and I think that'll be a relief to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Everett, and it was good to hear you make your report read this evening. Thank you very much indeed. I call upon Councillor Ashby to comment on or ask questions in relation to the Leader's report. Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to open by saying it's good to once again hear the dulcet tones of the Leader delivering his report in person, albeit via video link. Responding as I've been doing over the last few council meetings to a set of static words on a web page have proved rather emotionally void. As you mentioned, there has been significant developments for Thanet following the budget and the Conservative government investing in excess of 22 million in Margate and 2.7 million from the Future High Street Fund and 602,000 in Heritage Action Zone funding, both for Ramsgate. Of course, the hard work really begins with the delivery of any project, and it is vital that the residents of both Margate and Ramsgate see the tangible benefit and value for money these funds will bring. I'm sure that the Leader's new role of taking a lead on regeneration issues will enable him to keep the members and residents of Thanet fully updated on the progress of the various projects, and I would ask him to clarify how this will be communicated. You make mention of the reduction over the last 10 years of the general fund budget and the effect it has had on the ability to deliver services. I suppose it could be assumed it goes back to 2010 and the note left by the outgoing Labour Minister, Liam Burns, stating, "I'm afraid there is no money," and the arduous task this has left the Conservative government of trying to balance the books ever since. Even as a Labour administration, you must admit that the Conservative government has done everything it could to ease the financial situation brought about by the pandemic. TDC has directly received £3 million of general emergency COVID funding. Various other COVID funding worth £4 million for rough sleeping, test and trace, CEV, enforcement, isolation payments, CT hardships, etc. In addition, TDC finance team, who should be thanked for their hard work, they have administered and granted 22 million in business rate relief, 36 million in business grants in the summer, 20 million of LRSGs and ARGs since November lockdown, with approximately 2,000 businesses benefiting from these grants. In all, the Chancellor has picked £85 million of government funding off the magic money tree and paid it into Thanet. The 7 million went a long way to allow us to deliver a balanced budget, but we must not let this disguise the financial deficit that existed in certain areas of the council prior to the pandemic. The very recent announcements by Roger Jenrick, and I appreciate that you've already covered this, but I'll continue with this comment, brings welcome news of extra support for our high streets in the form of the Welcome Back Fund, which we understood Thanet will receive 191,000. He also makes mention of the High Street Task Force expert support. As we are some 18 days away from the Great Unlock, please could the leader advise what measures in readiness have been put in place by the council and when the traders and residents will be advised of the details. Although, Leader, you recognise Broadstairs would also benefit from investment, you have to prioritise the areas that it makes the biggest difference, that I understand. Other areas such as Birchington, Westgate and all the outlying villages are less frequently mentioned. And I'm sure they also feel somewhat neglected, even though collectively with Broadstairs, they make up some 38% of the overall population of Thanet. Some thought into how these parishes could be more inclusive in the overall levelling of the Thanet picture would be a welcome exercise. The success of the first online resident question and answer session via YouTube is a sign of how the council can make excellent use of technology to communicate with the Thanet community. Our enforced lockdown has driven the need to find alternative ways to engage with people. Going forward, there will be a fine balance needed between a hybrid of online technology alongside physical meetings to ensure that the democratic process is not distorted or restricted. I, for one, am looking forward to attending the statutory meetings in the council chamber again. They haven't yet found a way to transmit atmosphere through a telephone wire. I will close by wishing everyone a happy Easter, which hopefully will see everyone enjoying our wonderful beaches in a safe and responsible way. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Ashby. Some very searching points there for you, Councillor Everett. Are you ready to respond?
I am, Chair, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Ashby, for your response. I would never accuse you of presenting an emotional void. I think we're always interested to hear what you've got to say. Yeah, how will we keep people updated about the investment plans? Well, I think one of the issues is going to be, as we've said, that over the next year, there's going to be a lot of work done on working up the business cases for the projects. That's going to involve the people involved on the Margate Town Deal Board and hopefully the People's Panel as well. So that information, they'll be actively involved in that. Obviously, we don't act unilaterally in relation to the Margate Town Fund because the board exists, but we will work hard on trying to get messages out to people and tell them what's going on. But if they're expecting an immediate transformation of Margate, then obviously they're going to be a little bit disappointed. It is going to take time and the money will be spent over 5 years. In terms of the Ramsgate project, we're designing the engagement exercise as we speak, but I'm very keen that it's as inclusive as possible, and representing Newington myself, I'm very keen that the outlying wards in Ramsgate are as involved in that as the central wards, because I think sometimes that's a mistake that gets made in Ramsgate. I'll just address your point about Birchington and Westgate, etc. They were actually included in the area which could have been covered by the Margate Town bid. So I'm not quite clear. As I said earlier, there are some Conservative politicians on there, including Roger Gale. So if there's a feeling that they were neglected, perhaps they should take that up with him, who I believe is their MP. Yeah, in terms of the funding situation for the council, well, I think most economists, I'm not an economist, but I think most economists now accept that the Conservative government, which came in 2010, actually made things worse with its austerity programme and choked off a recovery that was already in place. But what I would say in relation to the pandemic is, yes, the government has dispersed a lot of funds into Thanet, into businesses and towards the council, but this council is still worse off as a result of the pandemic. We've got less money to spend and we're having to do more things. And in terms of the most recent amount of money, the 191,000, it is a fraction of the additional beach management costs, and only a tiny part of it, I think about 60,000, is supposed to be spent on the beaches. So the government hasn't given us the money to put things right, even where we were prior to the pandemic breaking out. But we do appreciate the fact that they have offered some support, and it's up to us to make the best use of it. And I just want to say, we've referred to the finance staff. I think it's only fair that we talked about the staff right across the council, because particularly the staff who've supported vulnerable people in the community and have worked in all our key services and all our frontline workers doing a very disturbing and worrying time. I've got a huge amount of respect for them, and I'd like to thank all our staff for all the work. And let's hope that we're coming to the end of this period and we don't have to keep thanking them because the emergency is over. But I'm full of admiration for the work that council officers and council staff have done throughout the last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and I'm certain those are sentiments shared by all members on this council. Thank you, Councillor Ashby. I call upon Councillor Reverend Stuart Piper to comment on and ask any questions in relation to the Leader's report. Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Leader. And Mr. Chairman, like many, I was a little bit surprised that this report was not published on the council website in order to reach as many people as possible during this pandemic, as other reports have been. It would have given a little more time for members of the public to digest inwardly all the information that's in them. But I also agree with Councillor Ashby that voice tone is an important part of any report. The Leader has done well to produce a bit of a party political broadcast for this evening, and so far we've had a little bit of a party political response as well, so I hope you'll note my voice tone and give me a little bit of leeway. With me, most party political broadcasts go in one ear and out the other, but I hope this one doesn't suffer a similar fate. And I say that because there are some real political gems in here. Mr. Chairman, who could not rejoice at the government's largesse? I am not a Conservative, but it seems even they have this public-spirited character trait when it comes to giving away money for our area. We should thank them wholeheartedly on behalf of local people across the island, though Margate and Ramsgate are the intended recipients in the main of this generosity of spirit. I am a servant of Ramsgate Town Council for the same people who elected me to serve them here in this council. And I suspect there are a few of us who might be just a little bit pleased that the Leader and officers from TDC are going to supervise the Town Council in its approach to making the most of this cash. The Labour-run administration at RTC has certainly got its own way of spending public money and could do with some guidance, I feel, so as not to waste it. They will no doubt therefore welcome their local leaders' help to keep them on the straight and narrow. Leader, targeting cuts as the reason for our decline is a relatively easy shot to fire, but the reality is always slightly different. I remember 2011 really well, and in some cases the situation was just as dire then, after 13 years of a Labour government, as it is now. In fact, the last time I remember Margate and Ramsgate High Streets being a hive of business and activity was as far back as the mid-1980s, when I used to come down here with my children when they were small. TDC at that time had no overall control, and a large slice of independents actually formed the opposition. The development of Westwood Cross and the continuing development of Westwood Town could just as easily be blamed for the demise of our high streets, but that is perhaps a discussion for another day. We are struggling with some service provision, but again, I think targeting street cleaning, managing litter and collecting bins is another easy political shot to fire. A quick look at the corporate performance graphs provided for overview and scrutiny by Hannah Thorpe and her team show that in the year of lockdown, for example, there has been no real significant drop in these services, despite more cars blocking more streets because more people are working from home. TDC does not create litter. For the most of the year, the residents of Thanet do that all by themselves. Leader, your cabinet colleague is being given more time to concentrate on the environmental matters in that portfolio. Too late, someone cried. TDC have just spent millions on a fleet of diesel trucks to recycle our rubbish. Apparently, the electric dream is more of a financial nightmare in reality. Talk about nobbling a horse just before the race. Still, the grass cutting is going well, and that's quite green. Or it is until it's been left to lie on the ground for a while. Leader, enough benevolence from me. Happy Easter to all those for whom it is an important festival. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Piper. Delivered with some eloquence and some amusement, a tinge of amusement. Councillor Everett, Leader, back to you for a response.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Piper. I think the issue of whether to read out the report or publish it on the website is something that I've sort of considered from both directions, and I won't hide from members that the reason it's not on the website this time is around the election period, when obviously there are heightened sensitivities about the use of council resources for anything political. But this is a political meeting, and I'm entitled to make a political speech, so you won't be surprised that I do. To be honest with you, the main reason that I initially wanted to post it on the website is it's quite difficult, I think, to make a long speech to a computer. If you're in the room, you can actually feed off the reactions of people in the room, and you get a sense of how bored they are with what you're saying, or whether they're interested, or whether they laugh at any jokes you might make. And I think just staring at the computer, it's quite hard to manage. I don't share all your concerns about Ramsgate Town Council, but what I can say is that RTC are not the accountable body for this money, TDC is. But the point is, it is an elected body represented by the people of Ramsgate, including yourself as one of the representatives, and it's absolutely right that we should work closely with the elected Ramsgate Town councillors, all of them, not just the Labour ones. There are some other parties there. I believe there's even one Conservative. And that's what we'll be doing. Yeah, the sort of funding situation in 2011 and the state of Thanet in 2011. Well, of course, the Conservatives have been running Thanet from 2003 to 2011. So I don't think that the Labour administration, the Labour councillors were actually responsible for any deficiencies that you spotted at that time. Still less the government. The point was the government was funding Thanet. What the Conservative administration was doing with that money, I have questioned in a previous council, but I won't go back to that. I think personally Westwood Cross was the right solution for Thanet. I think Westwood Cross provides facilities and high street names, or has provided them, who would not have come to our small towns, and that the shopping centres didn't provide the kind of accommodation and the critical mass of people to make them work as standalone centres. But they're still a very important and very valuable part, particularly from a community point of view. And therefore we must do everything we can to support our high streets. I'm glad you mentioned the corporate performance. I mean, I think that the new visibility and transparency of our corporate performance through the website, which we're bringing forward through the communications team, is very exciting. I think residents will like it. They'll be able to see in real time how the council's performing. And it's going to be much better than just receiving those statistics every so often. And just on the electric waste vehicles, I personally would love to have seen electric waste vehicles, but what I do recognise is, firstly, they were more than twice the cost. Secondly, they would have required a very expensive charging infrastructure to be put in place, which isn't there at the Manston Road depot. And thirdly, there are lots of questions about batteries and reliabilities. And the reality is we're a small local authority. I think we've got 11 of these news vehicles, and we simply can't be in a position where we've got vehicles off the road at any time, because what it means is we have to go out and hire them from elsewhere. And the bigger city authorities are in a much stronger position. And quite honestly, they will have to take the risk of innovating, because Little Thanet District Council can't really do that as much as we would like. But I very much hope that by the time we get to replace these waste vehicles, then their replacements will be electric, because technology and time will have moved on. And I think by that stage it will be possible. And just to reassure you, Councillor Piper, on that point, I personally am thinking about buying an electric car. So personally, I'm moving in that direction, and I hope other members will join me if they can afford it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. I call upon Councillor Garner to come on to ask questions in relation to the Leader's report. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to start as well with the good news. We, of course, welcome the award wholeheartedly, like Councillor Piper, the award of £22.2 million for the Margate Town deal. It is short of the original amount bid for, so the team will have some difficult decisions to make about which projects it is best spent on. As the leader says, the council are ultimately responsible for this, and I hope all the funds will be spent on those projects which most benefit the wider community of Margate. It's also, of course, good news to hear that we will be bidding for up to £20 million of the Levelling Up Fund for Ramsgate projects. We hope that when setting up the stakeholder engagement process, lessons will be learned from the mixed experiences of some residents who put a lot of time and effort into the Ramsgate Future High Street Fund bid. A proper, respectful partnership with residents is the only effective way forward to success. The leader is quite correct to highlight the fact that government cuts means that there has been a significant reduction in the general fund revenue budget, which means we now have to bid for these one-off funding pots. The change in the way the government funds local government will inevitably disadvantage small authorities and those like ours with multiple issues to address. While also welcoming what support we get from our local MPs on these bids, we remember that they've also been happy to support government changes which have led to the defunding of local authorities in the first place. I, of course, recognise that the main focus of attention should indeed be on those areas of Thanet with the largest pockets of deprivation, though it should be remembered that Broadstairs and the villages also have issues that need to be recognised and addressed. I would like to add my thanks also to the large number of volunteers who worked tirelessly to help clear as much of the recent polystyrene pollution as possible. I'd particularly like to thank Nick Mitchell of Wildlife Conservation in Thanet, who was one of the first on the scene to alert everyone to what had happened and who raised the profile of the incident to make sure concerted action was taken. While the clear-up operation has completed, a large number of the polystyrene balls will have dispersed up the coast and out to sea, causing harm to wildlife. A key question remaining outstanding relates to the remaining 8 of these pontoons moored up the River Stour, with similar degradable polystyrene floats to the ones which caused the damage. How sure are we that they are properly secured and that one or more of them are not going to break loose, either accidentally or maliciously? I realise they're not in Thanet waters, but it is incumbent on all of us to do everything we can to prevent pollution, so I hope we have been in contact with Dover District Council to make sure that they are taking any relevant action required. The incident as a whole has highlighted the damage that can be done to the environment by polystyrene, and now might be a good time to consider a suggestion raised at the recent online question and answer session with residents to ban polystyrene takeaway containers across the district, as has been done by other councils like Oxford City using licensing restrictions. A number of residents who attended this session reported that it was positive, friendly and frank, and we hope that this type of online meeting will become a regular feature of the way the council relates to residents, particularly on issues that cause them concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Garner. Back to you, Leader, for a response.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Garner. I mean, I think you make some good points about the polystyrene. I mean, actually, I would say that was one really good example of why the public meeting was valuable, in that was brought forward as a proposal. And you know, my assumption was that was something that we couldn't do at the meeting, but obviously it's something that we can go off and look at, see how other authorities have achieved that. I don't know how licensing would apply. How it would affect licensing, because licenses tend to apply to new premises opening or trying to do different things, but it's certainly something that we can look into, and we will look into it. And I share your concern about the environmental pollution from the pontoons. I know that our officers are talking to officers at Dover District Council, and you know, we will seek those assurances, but you will, as you've acknowledged, there isn't very much that we can do about things that happen outside our district. But certainly there does need to be a dialogue. Just going back to the local government funding, I mean, you make some good points. One thing which members might be interested in is the extent to which other authorities in Kent still base their budget on the new homes bonus. I mean, this council, I think, gets about £100,000 a year. The new homes bonus was something that was just being introduced when I took over the finance portfolio in 2011. But we had a presentation at Kent Leaders this week in which we were told that at least one authority a quarter of their revenue budget is made up of new homes bonus. Now, we'll have to look at what their funding is in relation to their need, but it does seem to me that there's some unfairness here in having a system which disadvantages Thanet, because as we know, we struggle to get developers to build houses because of land values. There is a consultation going on around new homes bonus, and this council will be submitting a response. But one of the things that sort of came out of it was, although we have some shared ideas across Kent, it's quite difficult for the councils to have a common position, because some people are doing very well out of the existing system, and other councils would do better out of a revised system. And certainly we'll look at anything which can bring more money into Thanet and help us provide the services that we need to provide. And I think that's it. Thank you, Councillor Garner. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. That concludes the Leader's report in response to there. And I think really what goes to show this evening is that it's quite evident to members of the public that there's a very active discussion our council does give to all the matters that concern Thanet. And I think that was very well demonstrated this evening. Moving on to agenda item 10, the annual report of the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel. I call upon Councillor Bayford to present the report. Councillor Bayford.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members will have seen that this is indeed a very comprehensive report, and I've got no intention of reading it out, and I'm sure you'll be grateful for that. I'd just like to make a couple of points, really. It's been a very full work year for the Overview and Scrutiny Panel. We carried out 13 pre-decision reviews, 6 post-decision reviews, and had 3 very comprehensive Cabinet member presentations. We also set up a memorials working party, which is due to finalise its deliberations and report shortly. One of the things that we did that I was most pleased with this year is that in June, we held a workshop, and that was open to panel members, but also non-panel members. And I'm grateful that other members did come along. And the purpose of that was to identify potential scrutiny review topics that would be of interest to local residents. We had a very good debate. And as a result of that, we came up with a list of some 16 potential topics. They were subsequently put in some kind of priority order. And at the July meeting, this list was adopted, and we will gradually be working through those. At least I hope we will in future. I can only talk for the fact that we started to do it. And if I'm around still, we will continue to do that. Some thanks are in order. I'd like to thank the members of the panel. The challenge they provided throughout the year has been really strong, and I think that we've got to the bottom of quite a number of fairly tricky topics, and I think members are much better informed as a result of that. I'd like to thank Democratic Services, especially Charles Hungway, for the support that they've given us through the year and made everything run very smoothly, so thank you to them. And last but by no means least, I'd like to thank officers and members of the Cabinet for their attendance whenever requested. It's a fact that in the past that hasn't always been the case, but they have come along, and I think we've had some very useful engagement, and long may that continue. I ask members to note the report, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bayford. Notwithstanding your reluctance to read your report out, I do know Councillor Bayford takes considerable pride in his chairmanship of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Do members have any comments for him? I can't. No, I can't see him. You're getting off light again this evening, Councillor Bayford. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 11, the annual report of the chairman of the Standards Committee. I call upon Mr. Tucker to present the report. Mr. Tucker, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Chair. Good evening to everybody. Can you hear me okay, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you.
I, like Councillor Bayford, have circulated the report, which I'm sure you've all read. It's not all that long, so I can't see any point in me reading it out as well and taking up valuable council time. All I'd just like to say is that I've enjoyed my first year within the Standards Committee, and I'm happy to take any questions from any members.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Tucker. Do members have any comments? I'm waiting, but I can't see any. I have one from Councillor Piper. Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the report. And I did note in reading it that you pay tribute to the late Peter Campbell, and we would just like to echo that. He was very fastidious in those things that he was involved in for standards and general purposes and so on. And it's clear we are all going to miss him. So thank you for remembering to mention him and the hard work that he has done.
Thank you very much, Councillor Piper, and that tribute. Thank you very much, Mr. Tucker. Agenda item 12, the annual report of the Chairman of the Government and Audit Panel. I call upon Councillor Garner to present this report. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, the report, which has been circulated, provides an overview of the Governance and Audit Committee's activity during the municipal year 2020 to 21, a year which has seen two different councillors chair the committee. I was elected chair in February after the previous chair, Councillor Simon Day, left the committee. I'd like to thank him for his work during the majority of the year and for helping me to take over from him. I'm pleased to report that the committee continues to discharge its responsibilities to provide independent assurance on the adequacy of the council's risk management framework and the associated control environment, and also endeavours to provide robust scrutiny and challenge of the authority's financial performance and of its governance processes. As outlined in the body of the report, the committee has been actively engaged with both internal and external audit, and I would like to thank all the members who served on the committee during the year. My thanks also go to the council officers who have supported me in my role as chairman and in the work of the committee. In looking forward to the next year, there will be a lot for the committee to focus on in a number of areas. And given the continued governance issues facing the council and the upcoming governance and culture review on the near horizon, the importance of an effective governance and audit committee remains critical. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Garner. Do members have any comments for Councillor Garner? And I'm waiting for any indications, but I'm not seeing any. No, I'm taking that as none presented. Agenda item 11, members' allowance scheme for 2021-22 report back from the ECHR committee. I move that the recommendations detailed in the report be agreed. Would the Vice Chairman please second? Councillor Wright.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now, unless anyone objects to the recommendations, I'll take them as agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 12, the recommendations from the Standard Committee, the full council questions from members of the public. I move that recommendations from the Standard Committee as detailed in the report be agreed. Will the Vice Chairman please second?
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
Now, unless any objections to the proposal are raised, I'll take that as agreed. Councillor Whitehead, you've raised a hand. Would you like to say something?
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to speak in relation to recommendation 6.1 part 2, and I would like to move an amendment in relation to supplementary questions for the members of the public. The amendment that I would like to propose is that full council does allow one supplementary question from each member of the public who is tabled to question at an ordinary meeting, following the same rules which already apply to supplementary questions from members. And I move this amendment because I think that full council should be always a reflection of our democratic duty. And we need to be responsible to the members of the public in terms of how we make ourselves accountable and how visibly we make ourselves accountable. I attended standards previously when this was discussed and argued for it at that point. I listened to very coherent arguments in relation to why members didn't support it at that point. Those did include the idea of vexatious questions. It did include mention of time limits. But all of these, I believe, are easily remedied by the chair, and we are very ably served in terms of our chair. So I do believe that this is something that, as a chamber, should be very important to us. I do think that the members of the public deserve a supplementary question. And as a cabinet member who answers those questions, I am more than happy to answer a supplementary question. So I would like to put that amendment before council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Now, of course, as we all know, that this was a cross-party a matter of discussion at the Standards Committee. I have to say, unfortunately, Councillor Whitehead, I don't see that as a valid amendment because it's negating the motion. We can take that on board separately. I mean, what we can do is, and has been suggested to me already, is that we take each of the recommendations in turn and put them to the vote. And I'd like to pursue that course. And in that way, we can actually get full council to have a proper full say on each of the particular recommendations from the Standards Committee. And in so doing, I therefore would like to draw attention to the first one of 5, that full council does not introduce an appeals process for rejecting questions. That's number 1. Can I ask the monitoring officer to go through the voting, please? Ms. Culligan. Ms. Culligan, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Sorry, Chairman. I was just seeing that there are a few comments in the chat of people who want to speak. First of all, which
right. Yes.
Well, so first of all, there is Councillor Everett.
Councillor Everett. Yes, I didn't see you there. Yes. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm concerned about your ruling, Chair, and perhaps the acting monitoring officer can offer some clarification, because I think in the report it says that the recommendations. It does offer the opportunity to amend the recommendations. Perhaps we can be clear about what exactly council is able to do, because it is a bit frustrating. This is a matter which has been going on for some time, and if we don't resolve it tonight, it won't come back to council until July, and then I think it won't take effect until September. And really, I mean, that's giving local government a bad name. Clearly, we need to act according to the rules. My personal view is that this council's got nothing to be afraid of in hearing questions from members of the public. We're perfectly capable with people who don't follow the rules of procedure, and you're perfectly capable as chair of managing them. And I'd like tonight to pursue Councillor Whitehead's amendment, and I'd like to understand from the acting monitoring officer what we are able to do, because it seems a bit ridiculous if we're going to defer it till July.
Thank you very much. So are you seconding that amendment?
I am seconding it, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Culligan, can I have some guidance, please?
Yes, thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much, Councillor Everett. It's difficult when you've got a group of recommendations that, you know, it's quite difficult to consider them overall because lots of people will have views on particular ones. So perhaps to get a flavour of how people feel and to allow everybody to have a say into what they would like, we could have a general debate first and allow people to ask their questions, put forward their points of view. And then perhaps what we could do is we could actually take each, I'm trying to think of the most ordered way of doing it. We could take each recommendation in order, and I mean, strictly speaking, you can't propose an amendment that negates a recommendation. So to say, you know, I don't want not to have a supplementary question, if you see what I mean. So what we could do is take a vote on each item separately, and if it fails, we could then say, does anybody have an alternative to propose, and do it like that. And then we have an ordered process of going through each recommendation. And I suspect there's probably only 1 or 2 of the recommendations that are controversial and that we may have a bit of a debate about. And we can take it like that. And if everybody's fairly relaxed about it, I think we'll get through it without too much hassle. How does that sound? So we'll have a general debate first, Chair. And then when you feel the debate is concluded, we'll go through each recommendation separately.
I like that. And in actual fact, that's what I was thinking of at the beginning. So thank you very much indeed for that. Do members wish a debate? Do we wish to discuss these proposals more fully? Councillor Everett, would you like to speak? I've got you down here as wishing to speak beyond seconding. Is there anything more you need to say?
Well, I've made my point, and I'm grateful to the acting monitoring officer for her ideas about the way forward. I think council should discuss this, and we should get a view from council tonight, and I'm supportive of that. I am, as I've said, supportive of the idea that we should have a period where members of the public are able to ask supplementary questions, and we shouldn't forget that we can change the rules again. If we find that whatever we put in place doesn't work, we can come back in the future and revisit them again. But I think not to be frightened of the public and not to be prepared to give them the opportunity to ask us a question that we don't know in advance. I think that will be disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Everett. I've got Councillor Garner who would like to speak.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to speak earlier to more or less say what Councillor Everett said. I think we do need to resolve this issue this evening, and we can't wait. We certainly can't wait till July or September. I certainly do support that we change that we amend number 2 so that members of the public do have the opportunity to ask a supplementary question. I'd also like to see point 1 changed, because I think there has been a bit of mystery about how some questions are accepted and some questions aren't, and I would like to see an appeals process put in place for rejected questions, or at least a proper reply given to explaining why questions aren't being allowed. But I look forward to voting on this. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Garner. Councillor Roper. Councillor Roper, I had you down here to speak.
Yes. Basically, I agree with Councillor Garner that number 1, yes, we definitely need an appeals process. I don't know how many are appealed at the moment. I suspect not very many. And therefore, to allow just to see democracy working, I think would be a great thing. So then give confidence to the public to feel that they are being cared for properly. And number 2, yes, the supplementary questions. It must be extremely frustrating for members of the public in particular to ask a question and get a response that they're not happy with. I have to wait for 6 months or more before they can ask the same question again and perhaps still get not a satisfactory answer. So yes, please, let's think about numbers 1 and 2. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just point out at this point, though, that as I said at the very beginning of this meeting, there is guidance on the council website for the writing of questions. And in addition, I have mentioned that the Democratic Services team are always available to members of the public to help them forming a question. So in a way, that should not be overlooked. Councillor Wing.
Yes, I also support allowing residents the chance to have a responding question. I feel very bad when they ask their question and they're given a response and then they don't. They're sort of not unable to respond back. It seems a pretty pointless task, actually. So I strongly support this. I would also like to see that where questions are considered vexatious or refused, that is properly evidenced and explained, because very often it's not. You're just told your question is vexatious and there is no justification or evidence base for refusing that question. And I think we should be opening ourselves up to more scrutiny through allowing our residents to ask us questions. And like's been said on here, we should have nothing to hide.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wing. I don't believe that this council does endeavour to hide anything, I should add at this point. My understanding is that Democratic Services team do give explanations as to why a question has not been properly received. Moving on, Councillor Hopkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say a little bit about the idea of giving members of the public the same right of asking a supplementary questions as we give ourselves as members. I just wanted to say that, it did strike me, when I was a newly elected member in 2019, that it did seem a little bit performative for cabinet members just to be reading out a pre-written answer. And it just felt like there's not much democratic dialogue there if you're not allowing members of the public to come back on what they might find dissatisfactory answer or one that doesn't answer their questions. So I personally think, as members, we need to be trying to, democratize as far as possible our relationship with members of the public. And I think this is a very practical way to try and improve that. And I think this is would be a really good practical and symbolic step towards better consultation practices with the public. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the point was well made there, Councillor Hopkinson. Councillor Scobie.
Yes, I think we should debate this, and we are doing that. And Councillor Hopkinson has pretty much said everything I meant to say, so I will shut up. Thank you.
Councillor Jill Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's good that we're debating this. I mean, personally, I believe that members of the public are entitled to support in writing their questions, so I don't really see their need for a supplementary. I think the important thing to remember is that if supplementary questions are permitted, far fewer questions can be asked on each evening. The time allocated to questions is reduced, and to my mind, it's far more important democratically that members of the public, as many questions can be answered as possible than supplementaries are allowed. For that reason, I really do not believe that this amendment should take place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Bob Bayford.
Thank you, Chairman. As always, my wife has said everything that I might have wanted to say, and I don't have any permission from her to say anything else, so sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Chair. Having sat on Cabinet and obviously answered a lot of public questions from the public and from residents, the thing that I'm concerned about is that if the supplementary question isn't somewhat structured and as a response to the answer that the Cabinet member has given, then it could lead to an answer not being able to be supplied by the Cabinet member if they are not fully prepared for it. So I'm not sure whether allowing a member of the public to ask a supplementary question that the Cabinet member hasn't got the full answer to wouldn't necessarily benefit that particular resident. I don't know whether or not it needs to be slightly differently worded on the basis that the supplementary question must follow in line with the original body of the question, because the whole point of being able to ask a secondary question is to listen to the answer the Cabinet member has given you and then to respond to that. But previous experience, and I know when I've actually asked questions myself, is that you do prepare your secondary question. So in a way, you're being rather disingenuous to the Cabinet member's answer, because you actually are not listening to the answer and you've already composed your secondary question. So I'm just concerned that the supplementary question could remain unanswered. Therefore, we've not actually got it any further forward than where the situation we are at the moment, and we would respond by that we would inform them by letter at a later date. So I'm not sure how we can actually close that gap on that. So I'm not sitting on the fence, but I just don't see how just a statement that we allow a supplementary question to be asked, how that actually fulfills the need of the full democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ashby. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, that's one of the principal reasons the Standards Committee, they did in actual fact debate that very issue. So their time was not at all misplaced. I've got Councillor Whitehead raised a hand and has asked to speak as well. Councillor Whitehead, do you wish to come back?
Yes, thank you. Just in relation to the time limits, I do understand that it's very important for all members of the public to be heard. But we do also need to remember that it's within the chair's discretion to extend that time if necessary. And although democracy and governance being my thing, I would greatly wish it to be different, and I'm working to make it different. It is quite often that we don't receive a huge number of numbers of questions from the public. And so I don't think that it's a significant danger at this point that we would overrun. But even if we were to overrun, I still think that our primary function is to be accountable to the public, and it is within the chair's discretion to extend that time. In relation to the supplementary question issue, that was why I phrased the amendment the way that I did. I do believe that a supplementary question needs to link very closely to the first question or to the response for it to be a meaningful exercise. That said, it is our duty, and I say this knowing full well that I am one of the ones that it falls upon, it's our duty to know our portfolios as well as possible. So we should be able to answer those questions. And if we can't, if it's something particularly technical or if it's something that requires a particular response and research, then at least that member of public has been heard in terms of their question and is entitled to receive a written response to that. So I do understand the concerns raised. I just still think that it is a very important and fundamental democratic right. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, of course, you may be taken to task on that at some future point, but nevertheless, well put. Councillor Roth, I believe, would like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. And I would like to give a respect to those they spend time to put this together. And also thank you, Councillor Whitehead, for bringing the amendment to this meeting. I think it's important to allow the resident that we are represented to have a supplementary question and maybe guide it, like Councillor Whitehead just said, to be close the question to the first question. But however, I don't think it will be any problem if the person cannot answer, just say, we will come back to you with advice and then email this answer to the resident. I don't see that be upset anybody, and I don't think that will be any problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roth. Now, I've got two more, after which I would perhaps think we've spoken enough on this. I've got Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back on Councillor Ashby, I understand what she's saying. I think it was clear this evening from even from Councillor Townend's response to his first question that it can go out of contour, but you brought him back, Chair. And I think that's the important part. That's the important part, and the important part that you have, Chair, in this. We owe it to our residents. I owe it to the ward that I represent, for my residents, if they want, as a cabinet member, to ask a question and then have a response and then have a supplementary question to it. Of course, it needs to be guided in relation to their first question. As Councillor White said, I've got nothing to be frightened of. I'm totally happy to answer any question. And I just think we owe it to our residents. We give it to ourselves to have a supplementary question, but we won't give it to our residents. And I just think that's just not right. We need to vote this in, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alban. Now, I've got one last one who I shall hear from, Councillor Farrance.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Alban's just said one of the points I was going to make, that I do think it's important that we send this democratic message to residents that we are happy to take a supplementary question, and it doesn't give a message of councillors just being able to do that and not residents. And the time issue, maybe these things can be reviewed. I do think the question session is so important, and as we've said, it's only 30 minutes, so that might have to be reviewed, but it seems unlikely because we aren't inundated with questions normally. So I want to support this motion wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Farrance. I'm not sure we've got an agreed amendment because as the officer said, it's a negating motion. Since she's been named, I'm giving Councillor Ashby the opportunity to come back. Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to remind members that we are an open and fully democratic process, and as ward councillors, the residents have every opportunity to contact their ward councillors, and that is the first port of call that they should be coming to. So I appreciate that they like to bring questions to full council so that the whole of residents can actually see that. But in the first instance, if residents have a major issue that is across the full council, then I can understand that. But a lot of the questions that get asked, you know, the ward councillor's duty really is to look after their residents. So the first port of call should be their ward councillors. The ward councillor, if they can't get a result, then they should go to the cabinet member. And really, I think the questions that are coming to the full council can be easily dealt with from a ward councillor level. Well, I would like to be thinking that my residents were coming to me as opposed to actually coming to speak at full council. And if you like, on an issue that could well be sorted and probably better sorted by their own ward councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Now, I'm going to wind this up now because what I'm hearing, what I'm getting from everyone is differences of opinion and crossing a couple of the actual recommendations. It's becoming complicated, unwieldy, and as we agreed, we do want to arrive at a result this evening rather than wait until July. And therefore, I'm going to fall back in first instance on the Officer Councillor Culligan's suggestion that we take a vote on each of the recommendations in turn, and then, if necessary, formulate a change. So first of all, I'm going to go to recommendation number 1, which reads that full council does not introduce an appeals process for rejected questions. Culligan, Miss Culligan, would you care to undertake the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. I will do. Could I just perhaps make a suggestion before we start?
Of course, yes, yes.
Because I think the debate has been around recommendations 1 and 2, I wondered, Chair, whether you wanted to canvass whether, first of all, we could simply consider recommendations 3, 4, and 5 as a whole, without going through all the names.
Well, that had been my intention in actual fact, because the remaining 3 have not been touched on, and therefore I'm reading that they're not contentious. So I would like to have 3 votes on the recommendation 1, on recommendation 2, and then 1 vote on the remaining recommendations. I shall be reading these out so everyone has clarity of what we're voting on. So falling then back on what I did say, the recommendation number 1, that full council does not introduce an appeals process for rejected questions. Ms. Culligan.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just sort myself out with a sheet. Okay, I should go through everybody's names. Thank you. Councillor Alban.
4.
Councillor Ara.
4.
Councillor Ashby.
4.
Councillor Bailey.
4.
Councillor Bambridge.
4.
Councillor Jill Bayford.
4.
Councillor Robert Bayford.
4. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Boyd.
4.
Councillor Coleman Cook.
4.
Councillor Crittenden.
4.
Councillor Curry.
4.
Councillor Day.
4.
Councillor Dennis.
4.
Councillor Dexter. 'Councillor Dexter.
Sorry, bit of a problem there. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Duckworth.
4.
Councillor Everett.
4.
Councillor Farrance.
4.
Councillor Fellows,
For.
Councillor Game,
For.
Councillor Garner,
Against.
Councillor Green,
For.
Councillor Gregory,
For.
Councillor Hart,
For.
Councillor Hopkinson,
For.
Councillor Huxley,
For.
Councillor Keane,
For.
Councillor Cupp,
For.
Councillor Paul Moore,
For.
Councillor Ovenden,
For.
Councillor Linda Piper,
For.
Councillor Stuart Piper,
For.
Councillor Potts,
For.
Councillor Pugh,
For.
Councillor Rattigan,
For.
Councillor Rolfe,
For.
Councillor Rogers,
For.
Councillor Roper,
Against.
Councillor Rozecki,
For.
Councillor David Saunders,
For.
Councillor Maeve Saunders,
For.
Councillor Savage,
For.
Councillor Scobie,
For.
Councillor Scott,
For.
Councillor Shrub,
For.
Councillor Tomlinson,
For.
Councillor Towning,
For.
Councillor Whitehead,
For.
Councillor Wing,
Against.
Councillor Wright,
For.
and Councillor Yates.
For.
Thank you very much, Chair. That's carried.
Thank you very much indeed. I felt that was fairly well in favour. Thank you very much for that. We can now move on to recommendation number 2, which I shall read. So listen to it carefully. That full council does not allow members of the public to ask supplementary questions. Ms. Culligan.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Alban,
Against.
Councillor Ara,
Against.
Councillor Ashby,
For.
Councillor Bailey,
Against.
Councillor Bambridge,
For.
Councillor Jill Bayford,
For.
Councillor Robert Bayford,
For.
Councillor Boyd,
For.
Councillor Coleman Cook,
Against.
Councillor Crittenden, Councillor Crittenden,
Sorry, having trouble with the microphone there for a minute. I did put a comment in the side box to say, shouldn't the normal procedure be that we vote on the amendment first? But if that's not the case, then against.
Yes, if I could come in there. I think we need to deal with the original recommendation first, since it was presented by the Standard Committee, to see how that fares with Council before we consider the amendment. We shall consider the amendment, obviously, if it falls that way against this motion, this recommendation. Back to you, Ms. Culligan.
thank you. Councillor Curry,
Against.
Councillor Day,
For.
Councillor Dennis,
Against.
Councillor Dexter,
For.
Councillor Duckworth,
Against.
Councillor Everett.
Against.
Councillor Farrant.
Against.
Councillor Fellows.
For.
Councillor Game.
For.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Green.
Against.
Councillor Gregory.
Against.
Councillor Hart.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkinson.
Against.
Councillor Huxley.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Cupp.
For.
Councillor Paul Moore.
For.
Councillor Ovenden.
Against.
Councillor Linda Piper.
For.
Councillor Stuart Piper.
For.
Councillor Potts.
For.
Councillor Pugh.
For.
Councillor Rattigan.
For.
Councillor Roth.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers.
For.
Councillor Roper.
Against.
Councillor Rozecki.
For.
Councillor David Saunders.
For.
Councillor Maeve Saunders. For. Councillor Savage.
For.
Councillor Scobie.
Against.
Councillor Scott.
Abstain.
Councillor Shrub.
For.
Councillor Tomlinson.
For.
Councillor Towning.
For.
Councillor Whitehead.
Against.
Councillor Wing.
Against.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And Councillor Yates.
Against.
Chair, that motion is carried. That recommendation is carried.
So we have the recommendation from standards retained. Moving therefore on to a block vote for recommendations 3, 4 and 5, and I shall read these out. They don't seem to have been contentious before. Number 3, that when the Chief Executive considers rejecting a question, they should consult with the Chairman of the Council first. Recommendation number 4, that information on the process for submitting questions and the support available is shared at full council and on social media. Recommendation 5, that the word limit for questions from councillors and members of the public be increased from 50 to 150. Now, I've taken those as a block because our previous discussion did not contravene any of those. So I presume we shall all be happy to vote for those on block. Back to you, Ms. Culligan.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Alban.
For.
Councillor Ara.
For.
Councillor Ashby.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Bambridge.
For.
Councillor Jill Bayford.
For.
Councillor Robert Bayford.
For.
Councillor Boyd.
For. For.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman Cook.
For.
Councillor Crittenden.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Day.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Dexter.
For.
Councillor Duckworth.
For.
Councillor Everett.
For.
Councillor Farrant.
For.
Councillor Fellows.
For.
Councillor Game.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Green.
4.
Councillor Gregory.
4.
Councillor Hart.
4.
Councillor Hopkinson.
4.
Councillor Huxley.
4.
Councillor Keane.
4.
Councillor Cupp.
4.
Councillor Paul Moore.
4.
Councillor Ovenden.
4.
Councillor Linda Piper.
4.
Councillor Stuart Piper.
4.
Councillor Potts.
4.
Councillor Pugh.
4.
Councillor Rattigan.
4.
Councillor Rourke.
4.
Councillor Rogers.
4.
Councillor Roper.
4.
Councillor Rozecki.
4.
Councillor David Saunders. 4. I've got a thing that says Councillor David Saunders is at the meeting. Councillor Maeve Saunders.
4.
Councillor Savage.
4.
Councillor Scobie.
4.
Councillor Scott.
4.
Councillor Shrub.
4.
Councillor Tomlinson.
4.
Councillor Towning.
4.
Councillor Whitehead.
4.
Councillor Wing.
4.
Councillor Wright.
4.
And Councillor Yates.
4.
Thank you very much. That's carried.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Culligan. Members of council, we've had a proper democratic vote for the recommendations as given by the Standard Committee, and my reading of it is that they have been accepted by this council. So thank you very much indeed. We have had a good debate on the matter. I'm sure the public will have had the opportunity to hear that we have done our best to defend the corner appropriately. Moving therefore on to agenda item 13, changes to committees, panels and boards for 2020-21, proportionality. I move the recommendations as detailed at paragraph 3.6.1 of the report to be approved. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
If anyone objects to the proposal, unless anyone objects to the proposal, I take it as agreed. And I'm not seeing anybody, nothing's coming forward. Thank you. Now, nomination of members to serve on committees. I turn to the group leaders who can take this opportunity to advise of changes to the nominations to committees, panels and boards for the remainder of the 2020-21 year. Councillor Everett, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
No, Chair, we're very nearly at the end of this municipal year, which in fact has been 2 years because we didn't have an AGM last year. And at this stage, we won't be making any changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Everett. Councillor Ashby, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
No, I echo the words of Councillor Everett. No change from the Conservative group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Councillor Reverend Piper, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
No changes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Garner, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
None from me, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, thank you very much indeed. That concludes the business of the meeting of this council this evening. Thank you all of you for attending. It's been good to see you. We've had a good debate. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair.